Greetings. I want to bring your attention to this ongoing chart that is produced by someone called Professor Mark J. Perry, and he is an economist at the University of Michigan and also one of the economists at the American Enterprise Institute. And unlike what I say about other economists, he generally has the right idea about a lot of things. However, he still has not figured out the connection between technological deflation and why monetary creation by central banks does not cause the hyperinflation that they expect. That's a separate topic. He does do a lot in terms of recognizing what sectors have inflation and what don't. So I scroll down, and this is a chart that has probably gotten him more internet traffic and more fame than anything else. And this is a chart that he updates from time to time, which is sector-based inflation in the US. Now, a global chart would be better, but it's much harder to find global data. That said, the more globally available products are the ones that are not experiencing as much inflation. Now, in his blog, which is called Carpe Diem, it's part of the American Enterprise Institute webpage, and as you can tell, this is yet another blog from the 4x3 era, and the blog is not modernized up to 16:9, and the real revelation of the 16:9 era is video, not blogging. That's why I myself moved from blogging to video. But nonetheless, as we go to this chart, we see a number of themes that I speak about on this channel over here manifest themselves. Number one is when low tech converts to high tech. Cathode ray tube televisions were dropping in price only very slowly, 1 or 2% a year, as I discuss in this video up here. But as they got converted from low tech to high tech, they started to drop at more Moore's law type of rates. So now you get thinner and thinner and higher resolution TVs getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And that is why TVs, as a combined group of both CRT TVs as well as LED type TVs and other computerized TVs or semiconductor based TVs, is part of this group. Back in 2000, nobody had one of those LED TVs. Even the high-end plasma TVs by 2003 were still $8,000 or so. But this is a decline of more than 90% in price, and in fact it would be better represented on a logarithmic scale if we were talking about just this one sector. Now the same goes for not just hardware based on electronics, but the associated services and software of these high-tech hardware products. So computer software has also fallen by about 70%. And cell phone services, so not the cell phone hardware itself, but cell phone services have also fallen by about 40%. Remember, in 2000, people were only just starting to get cell phones. They had those basic flip phones. They did not have smartphones. Smartphones were 2007, 2008, and only by 2013 or 14 did about half of cell phone users in the United States actually have smartphones. So the qualitative improvement of smartphones is not even captured in a chart like this, because the 2000 era cell phones were very, very primitive compared to the smartphones of today. You only had voice service, and you had a limit of the number of minutes during business hours that you could use on your cell phone. Between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. people had plans like 900 minutes a month, and only off hours did you have unlimited usage of your voice. That was true as recently as 2002, 2003, 2004. It seems kind of odd today that your minutes could be constrained based on time of day, or even constrained at all, and you would be charged per minute after a certain quota was exceeded. But nonetheless, that was the reality of cell phone service. But cell phone service cost has also fallen, even though the cost of the hardware associated with that has fallen much, much more, along the lines of how much television hardware has fallen. Computer hardware is something he doesn't even include here. If he did, then this would be even more powerful, showing how many things have declined in price. Then you have middle rung things that are not themselves high-tech products, but are produced by either high-tech processes or very globalized processes. Therefore, they cannot rise much in price. Clothing, for example, has not risen in price at all because it can be produced anywhere, and often is, and shipped anywhere. So the other theme we see here, in addition to low-tech being converted to high-tech, is that when a product can be produced anywhere and shipped anywhere in the world, there's a lot more competition in its pricing, and inflation is really not possible in that product. It can only get cheaper and cheaper, or at best stay at the same price, and that's why clothing, etc., is something that has not risen in price in 22 years. The same with new cars for the most part. But then we get to the products that have risen a lot in price, and these are the products that you would expect. Going all the way to the top, you see hospital services and university-related costs as the highest. Now, certain promising things are visible over here as well. College textbooks, which were never a huge part of the average household's budgetary expenditures because only a fraction of households actually had someone in college. Nonetheless, college textbooks were a huge scam. The professors would force students taking their class to buy the professor's textbook, of which only a small fraction would be used in the class, and the textbook would cost $125, $150. It has no resale value because it is only used by students of that class, and the professor would then in turn change the textbook for the next year so that you couldn't even sell it to the students taking the class the subsequent year. I've had to buy accounting textbooks that I lightly used, and I bought it for $80 and it had only $5 of resale value because that was the very corrupt scam that university professors all over the United States were getting away with. And it was very blatant and it was very unethical, but hey, they had a captive audience, and gouge them to the moon is what the ethos of these professors were. Now, in the age of the internet, in order to combat all this extremely predatory gouging of a captive audience, illegal things occurred such as free PDFs of known textbooks, but also now there is proper legal licensing of textbooks, which is good in that A, that's legal, but B, the producer of textbooks now have a legitimate way to get some money because the alternative is to continue on their old practice of gouging, in which case they'll end up having nothing at all because one student can just convert the whole book to a PDF and email it to all the other students. So perhaps a truce has been reached and this college textbook pricing has been flat for the last several years. It should be going down, but it has been flat. And Mark J. Perry talks about this in his article, so let's scroll down. You can see where he talks about college textbooks. We can expect future declines in the prices of college textbooks as the traditional textbook market faces increasingly tough and disruptive competition from alternative options, including hundreds of open textbooks that have been funded, published, and licensed to be freely used, adapted, and distributed. The University of Minnesota's Center for Open Education maintains an open textbook library website that lists hundreds of textbooks in more than 40 academic subjects that are available for free online or as a PDF file or as a print copy at a low cost, $33.50 for print copies from OpenStax. Based on the evidence in the chart above showing stagnating and now falling college textbook prices following half a century of rising prices, Hurricane Joseph Schumpeter appears to be hitting the college textbook market with a very large tsunami of creative destruction called the open textbook effect. So there you have an example of technological disruption of something that was overpriced, and this is the essence of how the atom, the accelerating technonomic medium of the world, works. When something is excessively expensive, usually because of regulatory protection and low innovation in an incumbent product, the probability of a high-tech replacement of that becomes higher and higher and higher. I discuss another example of how that happened with taxi medallions in this video over here that you should look at, but college textbooks were a very similar phenomenon where the incumbents thought they could get away with it forever because they have a captive audience, and they found that technological forces completely demolished their little scam, and now they can never even get back to the old prices, to the benefit of all consumers. Only the gougers are being stymied from this. And now we can expect the same thing to happen to college tuition. It was rising a lot, and now it's kind of flattening. And remember, even a straight line is a dropping percentage each year. You would have to have an exponential parabola to have the same annual growth rate each year. But a straight line indicates a decreasing rate of increase of price each year. And college tuition is now really flatlining. So perhaps what we saw with college textbooks is starting to happen with college tuition, and that is one of the themes of this channel. I encourage everyone to watch the video I have about the technological disruption of education, especially higher education, in this video over here, because it is just extremely expensive relative to what is being delivered, and the price is rising even though the quality of education being delivered is staying flat at best, and many would contend that it is actually declining. So perhaps the flattening of this line shows that technology is finally nipping at the heels of even this very high cost center. And then the only one that is left is hospital services. This will be a harder one to crack because as a society becomes more and more prosperous, one should expect a larger and larger percentage of resources to go towards extension of life. However, the costs can rise exponentially even as extension of life has diminishing returns. It's often said that in the United States, half of a person's healthcare expenses are expended in the last 14 months of their life, and half of that in the last 3 months of their life. That situation may not change even if the regulatory capture and the government entanglement that creates low productivity in these sectors goes away, because a more prosperous society is going to funnel resources into that, perhaps above all else. Nonetheless, there's a tremendous opportunity for innovation and automation in healthcare to lower the costs of many basic things and all hospital services that are perhaps not at the absolute highest standard of technological difficulty or medical challenge. More robotic surgeries means fewer days in the hospital that someone has to endure before they can go home. More and more surgeries will involve outpatient type characteristics, and that's something to look forward to. Now, all technological disruptions are interconnected. Remember, those of you who are familiar with my atom thesis or have read parts of it should not be surprised that as the atom got TVs down to such a huge decline in price, much greater than the decline that one may have seen from 1950 to 2000, by the way, because those were low-tech TVs, CRTs, now replaced by high-tech semiconductor-oriented TVs. You're seeing technology pull down college textbooks and college tuition because the alternatives are just so much cheaper, and eventually people just migrate to the alternatives. Partly because some of them just cannot afford the existing college degree. Now, employers, of course, have to do their part and recognize online alternatives as just as valuable signalers of educational completion or educational qualifications. Employers are slow to do that. Many employers just want to sustain a status quo, even if they think of themselves as innovative and productivity oriented. But nonetheless, this at long last is happening for sure. And that is how we see the atom pulling more and more things down. Average hourly wages rose by this much, and everything is below that except for these medical and college-oriented expenses, which we talk about a lot on this channel, and many of these are starting to pull down. A lot of these other things are luxuries, for example. Childcare and nursery school. Well, I did a video about how the telework revolution was a huge benefit to parents with children, because if one parent is working from home on a certain day, then they can coordinate, and there's a lot less dependency on daycare centers and things like that. And that's something I discuss in this video up here if you're interested in that particular topic. So technology is reducing the percentage of a household budget that necessarily has to go towards daycare and childcare as well, because a greater percentage of households are now within at least a partial work from home arrangement based on the types of profession that the parents are in. But even if both parents are in a partial work from home arrangement, they can coordinate with each other, and the dependence on daycare, as well as the commuting to and from the daycare center, which is another cost in terms of both time and transportation costs, that is also being relieved in terms of its burden on the average household. So things are looking up. Things are a lot better than the media would have you believe. And this sector by sector inflationary chart reveals a lot of the themes that I discuss on this channel, and many examples of how technological disruption is at various stages for various sectors, and quite a bit of food for thought. I hope you look at all the videos that I had up in the tiles above at the top, because each of those tells a story about the disruption of one particular sector. I hope you found this video to be informative, and if you like this type of content, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel if you have not already. Thank you very much for watching.